So Laura Ingraham stepped up her propaganda this week. Let's watch that now.
In the midst of this massive economic boom under President Trump, it is stunning how Democrats simply refuse to learn. If Trump's for it, they're against it, even on issues they used to be for. Like, look at how they've refused, for instance, to work with Trump on legalizing the Dreamers, or even maybe on prison reform, they won't work with him. Well, we now see that anti-Trump delirium is pushing Democrats further out of the American mainstream, right to socialism. A new Gallup poll confirms that more Democrats prefer socialism to capitalism. 57% view socialism favorably, while just 47% have a favorable view of capitalism. Just 2 years ago, those numbers were flipped. 56% then favored capitalism. Of course, it could be that socialism's attractive new poster gal is changing minds.
Do you think that the future of the Democratic Party is socialism?
Well, first of all, there's a huge difference between socialism and democratic socialism. Democratic socialism, and really what that boils down to me, is the basic belief that I believe that in a moral and wealthy America, in a moral and modern America, no person should be too poor to live in this country.
Trump believes that, too. That's why he's growing the economy so fast. Well, or maybe it's the indoctrination against capitalism on college campuses. For instance, at Middlebury College, juniors can take a class called Beyond Intersectionality, Developing Anti-Racist and Anti-Capitalist Feminisms. A University of Michigan textbook used for activism class teaches that capitalism should be overthrown. And according to data from Open Syllabus Project, Karl Marx is the most assigned economist in U.S. college classes today. Great. What college students would benefit from is a little less rage and a little more reality. Like this devastating exchange, now this goes back to the 70s, one of my favorites, between Nobel Prize winning economist Milton Friedman and old lefty Phil Donahue. It should be required viewing.
When you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that.
Now, let's face it. Without a solid grounding in real fact-based economics and history, our young people are sitting ducks for any huckster promising freebies. Free health care, free college, free housing, and the list goes on and on. Free scooters? Here's an indisputable historical fact that eludes most college professors these days. There has never been a successful socialist government. Not ever. 100 million people were killed in socialist regimes in the 20th century. The USSR, China, Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, Nicaragua, Zimbabwe, etc., etc. But we don't have to reach into the annals of history to tell us this. Just look at Venezuela today, a country rich in oil where the middle class once prospered. No more.
And there we have it. Time. How long was it? A little over 4 minutes, and we finally got to Venezuela. It really is. It's hilarious at this point. Like, we've mocked it. It's become like a meme online. Like, Venezuela. Venezuela. You're not listening to us. Like, we'll say something, and their response is just, I didn't hear anything you said. Venezuela. Okay, so, earlier we did a segment about Tucker Carlson and how I think his framing, it was actually a masterclass. It was a clinic in how to do propaganda, because the points where he needed to kind of round off those rough edges, he did it successfully. Like, he found a way to not just come out and say the things that were utterly ridiculous, but he would just, like, hint at it. And then it was very sly and clever framing where you could actually convince people who aren't already agreeing with you. Laura Ingraham is not as artful. I don't think she's as smart as Tucker Carlson. So she just comes out and says the stuff that you're supposed to hint at, and she makes it so easy to rebut her because the entire thing is just a fucking one giant straw man where she's talking to herself and sniffing her own farts and not listening to the counterpoints that are being made. Okay, so let's go from the top here. She talks about the Democrats still don't get it. There's a massive economic boom in Trump's economy. Right off the bat there, that's such a bad point that there are even right-wingers who will look at what you just said there and go, you're an idiot and you have no idea what you're talking about. And in fact, I'm going to get to a segment later about this exactly, about how there are libertarian economists who are like, look out, bitch, this economy's fake. Now, Trump and the Republicans love to, oh, what amazing economy. It's ours. It's mine. I get credit for everything that's happening right now in the economy. You're going to wish you didn't say that when this thing fucking tanks, and it's going to tank because this is the most obvious bubble in human history, but Laura Ingraham is too stupid to realize it. So yeah, this amazing economy, it's so wonderful, it's so perfect. Sure, wages are down, and your average person is hurting, and half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less, and the minimum wage isn't even a living wage, but there's a massive economic boom, and the Democrats don't even learn. No, you don't learn. You've learned nothing. We're in a fucking bubble. What happened in the 19-teens and 1920s when they did tax cuts for the rich and massive deregulation? The Great Depression. What happened after Ronald Reagan did tax cuts for the rich and deregulation? A giant recession. What happened when Bill Clinton and George W. Bush did tax cuts for the rich and deregulation? And actually, to be fair to Clinton, he didn't do the tax cuts for the rich. He just did the deregulation. Bush did the tax cuts for the rich and further deregulation. What happened? It is always a boom-bust cycle, you ignorant buffoon. And the thing that's so frustrating is she's so smug in her wrongness. Like, the Democrats don't get it. This economy's awesome. It's so awesome. Like, it didn't even occur to her that maybe that's not true at all. Didn't occur to her for a second. Okay, that's the first point. Second point is she just lies. These Democrats are so crazy, they don't even want to do a deal for the Dreamers. They don't want to do a deal for the Dreamers. The Republicans have a majority. You say Trump wants to do a deal for the Dreamers. The Republicans have a majority. They could do it, and they don't even need the Democrats. They could do it themselves if they want to do it. What do you mean? They don't want to do it. Trump says every now and then, oh yeah, sure, I'll make a deal. But then he never does it. Why? Because he's lying. Because he's on both sides of every single issue, so we can get away with everything. Here, I'll give you both sides of everything so that you could just read into it what you want to read into it and think that I believe whatever you want me to believe. It's an old trick, and he's brilliant at it. He was doing it during the campaign, and I was the only one pointing it out. Okay, so Dreamers, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course the Democrats will make a deal on the Dreamers. They'll do it like that, but they don't actually want to do it. The Republicans don't. Then she said, well, their argument, Ocasio-Cortez says no person should be too poor to live. So she portrays that like it's a stupid thing to say. Like, oh, look at these pie in the sky, pro-socialism, far lefties. By the way, yet again, for the 9,000th time, we're really not talking about social ownership of the means of production, socialism. We're talking about social democracy. Within a capitalist framework, you do a welfare state. You have the bare minimums, the bare necessities met, like Scandinavia, like the Nordic region. Okay, so she portrays it as like, oh, no person should be poor to live. Isn't that so stupid? Then when she cuts back from that clip, she goes, oh, Trump agrees with that. So then why were you just mocking it as if it's stupid? If you agree with it, why were you mocking it? They can't see that. This is why she's not nearly as good as Tucker Carlson at this. And this is why he's got probably significantly better ratings. Is that he's at least somewhat artful in his bullshit. Laura Ingraham is just falling all over herself. Oh, these stupid lefties. They believe in things like no person should be too poor to live. And Trump believes that too. But I agree with Trump when he believes that. But when the left believes it, I attack him for it. See, here's the thing that you're not getting, Laura. When you play that clip of Ocasio-Cortez, people are going to agree with it. And they're not rank partisan hacks like you are, a lot of people aren't. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, that seemed perfectly reasonable to me. So why are you attacking her when she says that, but you defend Trump when you say he believes it? Okay. Then she goes on to say, the left is so out of control. Look at these classes that they're teaching on college campuses. And one's like anti-racist class, anti-capitalist class, whatever the fuck it was. Now, I thought that you guys were the against censorship people on college campuses. That's what you tell me. Now, I happen to agree with you guys on that issue to the extent you actually believe it. I'm an actual free speech warrior, and my record speaks for itself. I'm the most consistent fucking free speech warrior probably that there is in modern politics. I actually will stand up for left-wingers and right-wingers if their free speech is being suppressed. So for you guys to claim, oh, we're free speech warriors, but then you're showing these classes as if, I can't believe these classes exist. An anti-capitalist class, an anti-racist class? Yeah, that should exist. In the same way that there should be classes that teach the history of fucking fascism. That should exist too. Why is that? I thought a free marketplace of ideas on the college campus. Unless they're left-wing ideas, in which case, I'm going to point it out and say, I can't believe these classes exist. And then she goes on to, no context whatsoever, said Marx is the most cited economist in class. She acts like the implication is, all these colleges are teaching Marx and they're pro-Marx. You do know that Marx can be taught in class and people are not necessarily pro-Marx, right? Like, you do know that it's important to know what he said even if you massively disagree with him, right? I hope you know that. Are you really that stupid that you don't know that? And by the way, I'm sure that that's the case. It's not like Marx is being taught and it's all nothing but pro-Marx coverage, no. And by the way, as I've pointed out repeatedly, I don't agree with Marx's solutions. But you cannot deny that his critiques of capitalism are stunningly brilliant. They are. They just are. Even people who are massively anti-Marx can admit that. Just because you don't agree with his solutions doesn't mean that his critique of capitalism isn't merited and isn't worth knowing. It certainly is. But she makes it seem like we're the free speech people, but Marx being cited on college campuses, I don't like that. Get rid of the Marx stuff. Well, then you're not the free speech people. Okay, then she plays that Milton Friedman clip. Now, it's a curious clip to pick because Milton Friedman, at times he has said brilliant stuff. I don't agree with him overall, but at times he said brilliant stuff. That was not one of the examples. Because one of the things he said is, great achievement didn't come from government. Didn't we go to the moon because of the government? And also, this idea, it always comes from the private market. That's where all the innovation comes from. That's so stunningly naive and ignorant because the reality is, yes, even when it comes to the internet, the initial funding that led to the development and creation of the internet, yes, that came from the government. Al Gore got a bunch of shit because he said, he said something along the lines of, like, I did some of the initial funding that led to the creation of the internet. And people were mocking him because it's like he was taking credit for creating the internet, which is obviously an extreme thing to say. But the general idea of government funding leading to the development and creation of the internet, that's true. It was government funding. Because there's no immediately obvious profit margin in creating something like the internet. So private companies are going to look at it and say, you want me to invest how much money for no guaranteed payoff? They're not going to say yes to that. And they didn't say yes to that. They needed government investment. So it's just ignorant and wrong to say, there's nothing good ever comes from the government. Then Laura Ingraham, again, totally drops all the nuance and says things that are flat out stupid. She says she mocks the idea of free healthcare and free college. And she equates it to free scooters. How do you not see how stupid that is? Who compares free healthcare and college, necessities, education, necessity, healthcare, necessity? Who compares that to free scooters? You do because you're a jackass. And then, of course, the final cherry on top, no socialist government anywhere has worked. She cites a bunch. By the way, notice she slipped in North Korea. But you're not even trying. You're not even trying with your propaganda. Everything that I don't like that's bad is socialism. Everything that I don't like that's bad. Stalin, socialism. Hitler, socialism. North Korea, socialism. I stub my toe in the morning, socialism. you have to at least be somewhat nuanced in your criticism instead of just flinging your feces against the wall and hoping it sticks. So that's obviously wrong. And when you say there's never been a successful socialist government, you totally omit an entire category of social democracy, which has been my point all along. It's been the point of many people in this insurgent left-wing movement all along, that they keep telling you that we can't create a better future. And that's not correct. And it's like we have all the empirical evidence on our side, if you just point to Scandinavia and the Nordic countries. All of the evidence. But the only way they could counter-argue is to just ignore our entire point and pretend we're making a point that we're not making. Their whole argument is to pretend like we're saying we want Venezuela. That's their whole argument. But we're not saying that. None of us are saying that. Most of us are saying we want Scandinavia, but they don't even acknowledge that. They say, I don't know, socialism, people died, it was bad, authoritarianism, something, stupid kids, you want free healthcare in college, that's not workable, even though it works in every other developed country perfectly. So it's just, as clever as Tucker was in his propaganda, Laura Ingraham was the exact opposite and was embarrassingly pathetic and sad with it. And that's probably why her ratings are worse than Tucker Carlson, because she doesn't know how to massage the point. She's a bull in a china shop, and the only people who are going to watch that are people who are already massively inclined to agree with her. So that's not an audience that's going to grow. With Tucker, on the other hand, he was just clever enough and smooth enough with his propaganda where he could win over some new people because they'll say, oh, it seems like he might be making sense. Laura, they're not going to do that if they're thinking even a little bit as they watch Laura Ingraham's segment.